Hi class, hope you guys had a nice weekend. Uh, thanks to everyone getting all their projects in and for your patience with grading. Typically, I am just talking to you in class about your exercises, and so there's less actual going through everything individually. So it takes a little bit more time than anticipated, but I've been working to kind of get that stuff back to you in a reasonable turnaround. So I just want to talk to you real quick about grading. Uh, it was brought to my attention that that rubric didn't post. I had tried to post it a few times. It kept saying that it was posted, and then it turns out it wasn't actually there. So I tried to put that back up to the project for project one, to that assignment page. So you should be able to look at that. You'll see that with the grading for exercises, sometimes I'll leave you a comment if I think that there's something that you need to pay some more attention to, or if you kind of missed a little bit of something here and there. But with the projects, there's a rubric, and then I also am leaving you some info on kind of what I was looking at, what you might want to look at a little further, what you did well. So just point out some key points. I know I've addressed that, but now that you actually have grades there, it'll make a little bit more sense. So with that being said, I tend to, as I mentioned early on, grade a little bit more rigorously as we move through the semester. So I felt like for this project, I was pretty lenient grading, pretty soft, rather than coming in, right out the gate being too hard on you. I give you a sense of kind of like easing our way into, grading more rigorously. So as we get to the later projects, we'll be kind of pushing you a little bit further, and it's not always easy to get that A just because you followed the outline. So really check that rubric, and the big thing, follow that project outline. Make sure you put in the amount of time that you need, and don't hesitate to ask questions. So I've had people in the past reach out like, oh, I got A minus, or I got a B plus, and I really wanted an A on this project. And it can be really upsetting for folks that are used to getting, only really high marks. Now, obviously drawing's different than, a science or history class, because it's more subjective. It's not like here's a multiple choice question, and if you get the right answer, you get your points. So with that, sometimes keep in mind it's just a few points. So if you got an 89 and you wanted a 95, that's 6 points. It's not, in the grand scheme of all of our total points, it's not going to have a huge effect on your grade. So, it's more symbolic than anything. It's like, almost we're at A level, but here's a couple things you could have done better to get there. Maybe you missed some points for, not following the project guideline perfectly, or maybe I just felt like the drawings were off to a good start, but they just needed more time, or they needed a little bit more adjustment. Like we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, about our work with subtractive drawing last week, just a little bit of a recap, and what it means to make corrections to your drawing and why that's important. But yeah, just wanted to wrap up, stuff about grades. So as I mentioned early on, you'll have the rubric. Apologize that didn't happen this time. Some technical issues with Canvas, but it looks like I was able to get it there, so I'll double check that today. You'll have a little bit of feedback, and then there's always the opportunity for you to reach out to me as well and get more feedback. We can Zoom, we can just email back and forth. Sometimes it can be hard to, have a conversation via email. So, I haven't had anyone, request a Zoom meeting yet, but as we get further down the line, maybe towards semester, I'm going to I've considered doing rather than a full class Zoom, just setting up individual, 15-minute Zoom conversations with everyone to kind of do a check-in like halfway, but we'll get to that. back with grading, like if there's a difference of a few points that you missed, there are some opportunities for extra credit. So far, we've talked about keeping a sketchbook. It's easy, 20 extra credit points. We have the value grids, and I mentioned that to most people that if you want to continue to work on that, those are really difficult. No matter how good you are at drawing, there's always room to improve those. It's like something that could almost never be finished. You can indefinitely work on that. But based on the feedback I gave you, if you want to continue to work on that, put in more time to see if you can improve on that, you get up to 20 extra credit points for that. I'm going to give you another opportunity. We're going to talk about another opportunity for extra credit today. There'll be others throughout the semester. I don't put them all out there up front because a lot of them have to do with our lessons that we've been working on. So I'll drop another extra credit option on you today. So to kind of reflect and recap on our subtractive work, ultimately, we talked about this a little bit, but I think that kind of work is really important because, a lot of times people early on in drawing, and some people even late in their drawing careers, have a really delicate approach to drawing. Like everything's really soft, everything's really careful and meticulous. And that's okay, especially if you know that you're going to work on this drawing for 100 hours. But when you're working quickly, you have 1 hour to work on a drawing, being really careful and meticulous isn't always going to serve you very well. Sometimes, you just have to be loose. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It can be really difficult to, let yourself make mistakes. But now you've pushed a drawing all the way to black and had to take it back. And so that's a good lesson in knowing what it takes to go back and forth like that. You can make a mistake, and the biggest part about drawing, honestly, I think one of the biggest things, if you could learn anything from this semester, is being able to recognize where your drawing looks good or accurate and where it doesn't. And if you can recognize where it doesn't look good and where it needs adjustment, then you know what needs to change to make it better. And in order to change it, you have to put in the time. So a big part about learning to draw is patience. Like it takes a lot of time. And the people that have less patience are either going to have a looser style and figure out how to be accurate in that quick, loose style, or they're just not going to be able to put in the time to make the drawing as good as it could be. They won't live up to the full potential. And that patience is a practice. Some people are inevitably and inherently, we have more patience than others. I have more patience with certain things than I do with other things. Like certain things in my life, I need to just get it done ASAP. Other things I'm able to sit with for a little bit. So it's a practice, practice having that patience. Don't be afraid to make big changes. I know it's hard. You've spent sometimes 2 hours on a drawing and you realize that something's off and needs to be changed. And it's almost like this denial thing in your head. Like you'll recognize it, that there's something off about it. If you don't know what's off and you can't figure out exactly what is off, ask me. And that's what I'm here for. I can show you, okay, check the angles here, look at this over there, especially when we get to longer term projects. But it's a skill recognizing what's off. That's the hard part. You're looking at your drawing and you're like, it doesn't look like what I'm looking at. If you can say, oh, it's this and that, then you know what needs to be changed. And that's step one. But then step two is actually making that change. And that's the hard part, is like getting yourself to be like, okay, well, I just spent 3 hours doing this and it can feel like it was for nothing, but in the long run, it's not, because it got you to the point where you said, okay, this needs to change. And now I'm going to make a better drawing on top of it and fix it. Or I just erase this whole section, or I just completely black it out and then do some subtractive work in there. So the subtractive drawing isn't just exercises. It's a major part of drawing. Like I said early on, your erasers are going to be as crucial of a tool for mark making as your charcoal, your pencils, etc. So I just want to show you real quick a couple videos. We're going to watch one of them together here, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. Or, I'll talk about it, and then there'll be another drawing or another video that you'll just watch that I'll post into the assignment page. So we're going to watch an interview by an artist named William Kentridge. I'll write his name in the assignment write-up so that you have a sense of you know, you could look him up if you want. But like I said, there'll be another video. And he is a really world famous artist from South Africa who works with charcoal. These videos are a little bit older, so I haven't kept up too much with what his current work looks like, but he makes charcoal drawings that become animation. So he's working over the top of the drawing, and we'll watch this video where he talks about his process, and then you're going to watch one of his films on your own. When I first started grad school in San Francisco, he had a show at the SF MoMA, and I was able to go see the show. And you know, I'd never seen his work in person, and the work presents itself as films. I've never seen a show of his where he's showing the actual physical drawings. They're presented as films. So we're going to watch one of these. Give me one sec. Let me get this set up for us. Okay, I'll share our screen here. And I'll post this one to the assignment page as well in case you want to rewatch it. But here we go.
There's a sense of animation as a field of transformation, of depicting transformation. That's always been at the heart of it. That continues today. Charcoal is very fortuitous material to be working with for animation because its tonal range kind of is very good for photographic film, but also because of the speed of its transformability. It's very easy to erase.
So he says it's very easy to erase. You may or may not agree with that after last week's subtractive work. But for him, after lots of practice, it's easy to erase. I mean, relative to a lot of other materials, it's easy to erase. You can't erase paint, can't erase ink. So it's maybe easy to erase isn't the right word. Maybe erasable is a better word for it.
So you can kind of change it as quickly as you can think. I suppose it became a way of thinking rather than a physical medium for me. Films are made without a script or a storyboard. So there are one or two key images that I know at the beginning of the film, and I'd start with drawing those. And literally that is, it's on day one when I say I want to make a film, usually by the end of the first day or the end of the second day, there's film that's gone through the camera. But a drawing is done on a sheet of paper. That's on the wall of the studio, and halfway across the studio is the camera, say 4 paces away. And I'll draw the first image of the sea and shoot 2 frames with the camera. Then walk back across the studio to the drawing. And on the same sheet of paper on the drawing, not make a whole new drawing, but just erase, for example, the top crest of the wave and change the shape of the white line minutely. Maybe add some more charcoal below. Walk back to the camera and shoot 2 more frames. And then walk back to the drawing and maybe make that white line fatter so that in fact the foam is getting thicker on the top of the crest of the wave. Maybe it's getting darker underneath, add more charcoal there. Walk back to the camera and shoot 2 more frames. I've now shot 6 frames. That sequence would continue with the walk between the camera and the drawing. If it's 4 seconds long, that's 100 frames, 50 walks. If it's 20 seconds long, it's so much longer. So there are sometimes many hundreds of alterations on one sheet of paper. And the sheet of paper that is left is the last frame, not of the film, but of that sequence in the film, of that shot. I'm not seeing what's being shot. I have to take it on trust what is there.
So basically what he's saying is that he's got this medium format camera and it's got film in it. So, you know, I've had students ask me, it's like, why can't he see what he's doing? You know, what is a medium format camera? But the video is old, and so he's literally using film inside of his camera. So it's not a digital camera. There's no screen on the back that shows the image. Like, he can't see it until it's developed. So there's this kind of, like, what he's saying is there's this kind of trust that's happening between the camera and the drawing. He mentioned that charcoal has a good tonal range for photography on film, meaning that it reproduces well on his films. But you know, if you've ever done any stop motion animation, you know that I think generally high quality stop motion animation has like 32 frames per second. So that's in 1 second of film, there's 32 drawings. So he's saying that he's adjusting this for 1 second or 4 seconds. He said there's in his, so maybe he's doing 25 frames in 4 seconds. There's 100 different images. So that's the same drawing, but he's walking back and forth 100 different times and making small adjustments to it, taking a picture. And then at the end, he's kind of tying all these pictures together into an animation. So it's very extremely time consuming. You know, if that's, you know, 4 seconds is 100 frames. How long is it? How many frames is a 4 or 5 minute video? A lot.
All that you see at each moment is the present. In other words, the state of the drawing at that moment. And it's very much in the belief that in that physical walk between the drawing and the camera, in that physical process, it's not a mental process, it's a physical process, new images and ideas suggest themselves to go before that shot, after that shot, what that shot can develop into.
So he is an artist. I felt like he was really applicable because while it's films, he's one of the more famous artists in the world. He's dealing with drawing, and his work is very much subtractive. You know, he's talking about the waves. It's additive and subtractive. It's just back and forth. He's talking about the crest of the waves. He erases, he adds back in. You know, really a good example of someone that's working in drawing and using charcoal and doing what we've been doing in class. So it's interesting to think, you know, talking about his use of film, what his work could look like now that there's digital cameras and, you know, Final Cut Pro and all these things on the computer. How does his work look now? How has it changed? It'd be interesting to look into. The next video you're going to watch is a short take from Art 21 series. Art 21 is a series that goes and interviews individual artists, like not just anyone, but like very accomplished, famous artists in their studio. And most of the videos are about an hour long. It's like doing a studio visit. You get this behind the scenes look at this artist. And sometimes it's just one person working by themselves. Sometimes they've got a team of 100 people that are doing these massive public sculptures, and they have fabricators and, you know, they hire cranes, and it's these huge productions. But either way, it's really interesting because they talk about their process in a way that you wouldn't get this inside look just seeing their work. So they show you how they're doing it, how it's accomplished, but then also, you know, a more of a talk about what it's about. So this video is just one of his short films. It's 4 minutes long, I believe. And it's just an excerpt from his larger Art 21 interview. So you're going to watch that, and he'll talk more about the kind of conceptual side of his work. So that was a technical video talking about the how he does it, and the conceptual side is more the why he does it. What's it about? And it's just one of his videos. So you're going to watch that, but I wanted to give you an option for extra credit. If you wanted to research and find somewhere that you can watch these whole Art 21 videos, there's multiple seasons, so there's many different artists to choose from. And you can look and find the whole video. Choose an artist that stands out to you. You might even be able to just Google Art 21 series. Maybe it'll have its own website. You can watch the videos. It's an educational tool, so it should be out there. Choose an artist, watch the whole video, and then do a write-up on that video on the artist. I'm going to create an assignment page for this. It'll just be, you know, no deadline for turn in and worth 0 points, but you can get up to 20 points for it. So you just follow the instructions there. If I can find the Art21 link of where all the videos are, I'll just post it. You can watch one. It's like an hour long. Do this write-up, hit all the bullet points that are in the assignment that I'll post. You can get up to 20 points of extra credit. If you just watch one and you write, oh, I watched this one on Tim Hawkinson, who we saw in our initial first slideshow, and his work was weird and I didn't really like it, and that was it. Maybe you'll get a couple points, but you're not going to get the full 20 without the proper So like I said, it'll all be in there. It's just another opportunity for extra credit. So just a little bit of a recap on our subtractive work. We're going to get more into additive and subtractive back and forth this week. But what we're going to start with for today's purposes for the next couple days is dealing with negative space. So negative space is just another way of looking at your still life and your objects and trying to make sense of it all. You know, we talked about measurement and proportion a lot, and you watch that longer video, and it's going to be something you're going to be dealing with through the rest of your time of drawing. But so far we've been focusing on the objects themselves. The object is the positive space, and all that empty space around the object is the negative space. So another way to think about this, I'm going to see if you can see my piece of paper here. So another way to think about this, we're going to watch a video together again, and it'll kind of explain this in a better way. But another way to think about this is if you have a donut, this is your donut. It's got sprinkles all over it, right? The donut is the positive space. And this, all of this around the donut and the donut hole, that's your negative space. So donut positive, empty space is negative space. So far, if we've been, working to draw this donut, let me see if I can turn this and get a little better light on us. Maybe you were measuring the donut by this positive, how big's the donut, but now you can figure out using this negative space, just another area to measure. So like you can measure the hole. How big is the donut hole relative to the donut itself? We're going to see some other examples of this, but it's a really simple way to break down. Positive is the object, negative is kind of the background or empty space. So, we're going to see an example of a drawing of a chair, and it's funny because I just found this on YouTube, but this is exactly kind of the example I would use in class. Like I'd set up a stool because it's got a lot of legs and interesting negative spaces, and we'd use that as an example. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to kind of watch this video together. And once again, I'm going to post it, so you're going to have some info there. And this is going to be really similar to the exercise that we end up doing, or exercises that we end up doing. So share this again.
And negative spaces. Maybe you remember the classic faces and vases illusion. If you focus on the vase, the white part, that becomes the positive space, which makes the black part become the negative space because it looks like it's in the background. Yet, if you focus on the faces, the black space, they become the positive space, which pushes the white vase into the background, making it the negative space. Let's take a look at this tree. In this picture, the tree is very clearly the positive space, and the white space in the background is the negative space. The positive and negative space in this picture is perfectly balanced, creating a nice composition. If we zoom in a little bit more, the black space, the tree, is still the positive space, and the white space is still the negative space. Yet, it's unbalanced, the positive and negative space. As a composition, this still works out fine. Last, let's look at this composition. Here we have, again, the tree and the ground as the positive space, and this huge white space that is the negative space. Again, with an unbalanced composition. This is also okay. The imbalance of the positive and negative space actually helps create a different feeling or emotion, possibly lonely, or maybe even a calm feeling. Hopefully this overview has given you a better idea of what positive and negative spaces are. Now we're going to move on to an exercise. When you come to class next time, I want you to draw a stool by drawing only the negative space. Reminder, this is what you will be doing in class. So here's a picture of a stool from our classroom. I'm going to carefully look for the negative spaces. As you can see, I'm now outlining one of the negative spaces in red, this long, skinny rectangle. I'm carefully trying to recreate that exact same shape on my sketch pad. Now, please make sure that as you are recreating this drawing in your sketchbook, that you make it really, really large so you fill up the whole page. Now I'm moving on to a tiny little negative space that I see below that rectangle. Next, I'm going to move on to the next negative space. Again, a long, skinny rectangle. I'm being very, very careful to make sure that my spacing between the rectangles is fairly accurate. I'm also being very careful to make sure that the lines that should be lined up are properly lined up. Whereas if you looked at the top, those lines are not perfectly lined up. As I move on, I once again want to make sure that my spacing is good in between my negative space rectangles that I'm drawing. I'm also double checking the angle of the lines for the top and the bottom of my rectangles. The one on the top is very clearly lined up with the middle rectangle, whereas the one on the bottom has a different angle. It starts to angle down. Now to draw the last couple negative spaces that I see in between the legs of the stool. There's a small rectangle toward the bottom. I'm very carefully making sure that the proper lines of the rectangle are lined up with other lines in other areas. I'm also paying attention to my spacing in between my negative spaces or my negative shapes. This spacing between these negative shapes is very important in order to keep a nice proportioned negative space drawing. Next, I'm going to move on to the outline of the legs. I want to pay close attention to the length of the legs, and I'm comparing.
So right now, when you're looking at it, she basically just has the enclosed negative spaces. So anything in this stool that is an enclosed shape, so just think of that as the closed negative spaces. It's completely, closed off, where this space down here below the chair that she's starting to work on now is more of that exterior contour background negative space. So think about that for our purposes, because that's going to be influential for our exercises, because we're going to start some by doing the shapes on the inside and then some by starting with a contour on the outside. And I'll show you here what that'll look like afterwards.
Comparing it to my negative spaces up top so that I can get the length just right. I also want to make sure that I have the angles correct. That is, the angles that are connecting the legs to one another. My back leg comes down only a tiny bit. I need to be very careful of that. Notice I'm also being careful of the very, very bottom of the leg and the angles that go into making that. The leg I'm drawing now is the leg that is closest to me. So as you can see, it comes down just a little bit further than the first leg that I started to draw. I can also carefully take the rest of my outline all the way up toward the top of the stool. Once I get my fourth leg in, I can do the same on the left-hand side. Double checking my angles and also double checking to make sure that all of the lines are lined up properly. My final leg comes down just a little bit further than my back leg. So as you can see, all of the legs come down to different areas on my paper. They are not lined up at all. I want to be very, very careful of this because this helps me to show the proper perspective of my stool. Lastly, I'm going to draw the top of the stool. The space at the top of the stool tends to be a little bit bigger than we often think it is, so please be aware of that. Yet the very, very top round part of the stool is quite thin. And oftentimes we can see the back of the stool, which makes it look like it's arching up ever so slightly.
So we're not going to use rulers and clean it up like she is. It's not important. It doesn't need to be a perfect drawing. These are just exercises. But basically what we have here now is a drawing that just, let me see if I can find it with just,
Oftentimes, we can see the back of the stool.
Okay, so here we've got her drawing, and it is almost a silhouette of the chair, right? So we've got information that is the chair, but we don't have contour lines on the inside that are showing the edges. So while you do your similar assignments, remember, we're not showing the details inside the stool or chair or whatever it is you set up at home. You're just focusing on trying to represent this object through drawing these negative spaces. So I wouldn't want to see in your drawing a line coming down this front part of the leg that would show this edge, or a line coming across that would show this edge here, because this isn't a negative space right here. The negative spaces are the areas that are outlined in red in her drawing and then represented here to show kind of a silhouette of the chair. She's going to go in this video and shade in the back areas. I think she's going to use red, but we're just going to do that with pencil or charcoal, whatever material you choose for this.
Which makes it look like it's arching up ever so slightly. Lastly, I'm just going to double check with a ruler to make sure that all of the lines that should be lined up properly are lined up properly. This just helps once again with the proportions of my piece. Now I'm ready to color. Please take one color only and color in the negative spaces as nicely as possible.
So once again, we're not going to use color. You're just going to fill those in with charcoal or pencil. So you can watch this on your own. I'm just going to skip ahead.
And date it. So there you have it.
So when it's done, your drawing will look like this. So basically, I'm going to show you some more info here, and you're going to have the project outline, but you're going to choose some objects at home that you feel have interesting negative spaces. Chairs are always good. You know, if you have a tire sitting around, you know, get creative, look around and see what you can find. There's lots of options. Maybe you have a shelving unit somewhere that you can empty off that just has cool kind of negative spaces in there. Whatever it is, we're gonna make 4 drawings of either one object from different angles or multiple different objects that look similar to this. 2 of those drawings, you're gonna start the way she did on the inside, finding these shapes only the closed shapes, and then doing the outline. And then the next one, you're going to do that. The next 2, you'll do that in reverse. So you'll start with the outline, and then from there, you'll do the inside shape. So what that looks like here, I don't have the same setup, so I don't have as good of an angle, but you can kind of see it. So I've got this really basic stool drawing. The way she did it, if I'm copying this here, is you're going to start by finding those negative spaces. I'm just trying to get through this quick for you. So that would be the first part. And then you're going to come around. This part comes down a little longer. I'm just doing this with pen so that you can see it. And I'm going quick. So that would be the first way of doing this. The next way is we would start with the outline. So the first 2 drawings are going to be like in this, and then you're filling these in so that you've got this kind of like negative version of the chair. These will all get filled in all around, just like she did. The next 2, we're going to start with that outline, just like we did in our initial blind continuous contour drawing. So it'll be like so. Like that, and then you'll come in and find these little spaces. And I am just going really quick. You're going to take at least 5 minutes for each one of these, so you'll be able to make a nicer, you know, drawing. But I'm just doing this really quick to show you. So just the opposite approach, basically, starting from these inside shapes on the first two, and then working towards the second two, starting with that exterior contour outline like we had done before, and then picking out the enclosed negative shapes on the inside. So you're going to do 4 drawings. Once again, you can do the same object 4 times, or you can do 4 different objects. Either way, choose something big. Like if you've just been doing little things like, you know, little boxes or water bottles, this time choose something a little bit bigger. Put it out in the room in front of you, like a chair. You could use a ladder if you've got one, a step ladder, whatever you can find that has interesting negative space. So those are going to be your initial 4 drawings at least 5 minutes each. And then they don't have to be huge drawings, but don't make them too small. You could put all 4 of them on one piece of newsprint. So they're at least like hand size each, like 6 by 6 inches, something along those lines. But then for the last 2 drawings, you're going to take multiple objects and stack them together so that it starts creating interesting different negative spaces. So in this example, you know, I've just done something really quick and simple. We've got like a stool with maybe there's a wheel on it, and then I've got some boards kind of laid up against it. So then here I've got these, let me see if I can find a different color that'll help illustrate this a little better. So in this example, I've got new and interesting negative spaces that are happening, like this one here on the interior is created through that. I've still got my stool and I've got this negative space here, but the exterior negative space is becoming a little bit more complex and interesting as well. So maybe, you know, thinking about stacking things in front of one another, if you had something else stacked in front here, then instead of just your regular shape of the stool from the previous drawings, you start ending up with these, you know, other interesting negative spaces. So you're going to do 2 of these with multiple objects, and I'll write it up so it makes a little more sense. And for those, you're going to spend at least 15 minutes each. So that's it for this class. You're just going to take pictures of that and send it in to me, all 6 of your drawings, before Thursday at noon. And then Thursday at noon, I'm going to have another exercise where we deal more with additive and subtractive work in charcoal. So for this exercise, once again, it's posted as usual, all the info there with this video and the others in the assignment. But you're going to have 6 drawings. You know, take pictures, send them in as normal. Any questions at all, just ask. It's difficult to kind of train your brain to think about the drawing in reverse, thinking about the space around the objects, the shapes that are made in those negative spaces rather than focusing on the object itself. But once you can start seeing that and you're just looking at that kind of inherently in whatever it is you're drawing, it's just another area that you can then use to measure and be accurate. Super important. When we start bringing value into it next class, you'll see how controlling the values and light and darkness of those negative spaces is going to really help pop your object in the positive space. So yeah, any questions, email me. This will be a helpful assignment. And after this week of dealing with negative space, it's kind of like the last building block. We're going to get into a little bit more fun, like nitty gritty, less just straightforward still life. So yeah, don't hesitate to email with questions, and I'll look forward to seeing your drawings.